The sun set over the sprawling kingdom of Umunze, casting a golden glow over the royal palace. The bustling market outside the palace gates quieted as traders packed up their wares. It was a land of vast riches, fertile lands, and a proud people. At the center of it all stood King Nduka, a ruler known for his wisdom, and his son, Prince Chike. Chike was a striking young man with the build of a warrior and the charm of a griot. Wherever he went, maidens giggled behind their wrappers, casting shy glances at him. But Chike was no longer a boy, he was nearing his 25th year, the age when princes were expected to marry and secure the future of the throne. On this particular evening, King Nduka sat in the royal chamber, his regalia heavy with golden embroidery, reflecting his status as a custodian of tradition. His face, though aged, carried the sharpness of a man who had weathered many storms. "Chike, my son, come closer," the king beckoned. Chike entered, bowing slightly before taking a seat on the carved wooden stool. His gaze wandered to the intricate murals on the chamber walls, paintings of past kings and their legendary deeds. "My son," Nduka began, "you are of age to marry. The people are waiting for a queen, and our council is pressing me to see you wed. It is time to fulfill your duty." Chike nodded but remained silent. The king continued, his tone growing firmer. "Marriage is not just about love or beauty. A queen must be wise, kind, and strong enough to hold this kingdom together when the winds of life blow fiercely." "I understand, father," Chike replied, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. King Nduka leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Do you? Because I see your heart wandering. I hear whispers of a maiden you fancy, a girl named Amaka, from the village of Nobi. Her beauty is said to shine like the sun, but her heart," he paused, shaking his head. "Her heart is as fickle as the harmattan breeze. Be careful, my son. Beauty without virtue is poison." Chike frowned slightly but hid his displeasure. "Father, I have met her only once. She seems kind." "Once is not enough to know a person," the king said. "Remember, a crown sits heavy on the head. Do not let infatuation cloud your judgment." Chike nodded again, but deep down, his thoughts were already drifting to Amaka. She had appeared before him at a village festival, dressed in a flowing red wrapper, her skin glowing like polished mahogany. Her laughter had been intoxicating, her voice a melody he couldn't forget. "Father," Chike said hesitantly, "I will think carefully." Nduka sighed, sensing his words had only partially reached his son. "Do not think, my son. Act wisely. In 2 months, we will hold a grand gathering. The maidens from across Umunze will come, and you will choose your bride. Seek not just with your eyes, but with your spirit." Chike rose and bowed, leaving the chamber. Outside, the cool evening breeze greeted him, but his mind was clouded. He strolled through the palace gardens, his heart wrestling with his father's words. That night, as the kingdom rested under a blanket of stars, Prince Chike lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his chamber. His thoughts were consumed by Amaka, her laughter, her gaze, the way she had danced at the festival. The warnings of his father echoed faintly in his mind, but the pull of his heart was stronger. Far away in Nobi, Amaka sat with her mother in their small hut. Her beauty was undeniable, but behind her striking features lay an ambitious heart. When she heard of the gathering to be held at the palace, a cunning smile spread across her face. "Mother," she said, "Prince Chike will choose me. I will be queen, and we will leave this wretched village behind." Her mother, a woman as shrewd as her daughter, nodded. "You have the beauty, my child, but you must also have the wit. Remember, charm the prince, but control the kingdom." Amaka laughed, a sound as sharp as a blade. She began planning her every move, determined to win Chike's heart, no matter the cost. The day of the grand gathering arrived with much fanfare. The palace grounds of Umunze were transformed into a vibrant celebration, teeming with life and color. Drummers beat their talking drums with fervor, while flutists played melodies that filled the air with joy. Women in flowing wrappers and Gaelic danced with grace, while the men cheered, raising their calabashes filled with palm wine. The gathering, known as the Festival of Maidens, was not just a royal event, it was a tradition steeped in the history of Umunze. Maidens from every corner of the kingdom arrived, their heads held high, their beauty and virtue on display. It was a chance to showcase their families and vie for the ultimate honor, becoming the Queen of Umunze. Prince Chike stood on the royal dais beside his father, King Nduka, and the Queen Mother, Nkechi. Chike was dressed in a regal agbada, adorned with gold embroidery, his staff of authority in hand. Yet, despite his royal composure, his eyes were restless, scanning the crowd for one face, Amaka. King Nduka watched his son closely. He could sense Chike's anticipation, the way his fingers drummed lightly on his staff. It worried the king, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned to the gathered maidens and raised his hand for silence. Today, the king's voice boomed, we celebrate the beauty and virtue of the daughters of Umunze. My son, Prince Chike, will choose his queen from among you. Let this choice bring prosperity and peace to our land. A cheer erupted from the crowd as the maidens began to present themselves, one by one. Each came forward, curtsied, and spoke briefly about her family and values. Many were adorned in their finest attire, beads glistening on their necks and wrists. But Chike's attention wavered until, finally, she appeared. Amaka stepped forward, her head held high, her every movement deliberate. She wore a wrapper of deep blue with golden patterns, her coral beads shining against her dark skin. Her hair was braided intricately, and her smile was as radiant as the morning sun. The crowd murmured in admiration, and even Queen Nkechi leaned forward slightly, impressed by Amaka's presence. Chike's heart raced as Amaka curtsied gracefully before him. Your Highness, she said, her voice like honey, I am Amaka, daughter of Obidike from the village of Nobi. My family has long served the land, and I am here to serve you, if you choose me. Her words were simple, but her gaze held Chike captive. He barely heard the next maiden introduce herself. King Nduka noticed his son's reaction and sighed inwardly. As the presentations continued, Chike found himself comparing every maiden to Amaka. None matched her beauty, her poise, or the effect she had on him. By the time the final maiden had stepped forward, Chike's mind was made up. When the crowd fell silent, the king rose. My son, the time has come. Who among these maidens will you choose to stand beside you as queen? Chike stepped forward, his heart pounding. His eyes swept over the maidens, but they stopped on Amaka. He raised his staff and pointed at her. I choose Amaka of Nobi to be my queen. A gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by applause and cheers. Amaka stepped forward, her face a mask of humility, though inside, she was triumphant. She curtsied again as Chike took her hand and raised it for all to see. King Nduka's expression remained unreadable, but in his heart, he felt a pang of disappointment. He knew his son's choice was driven by infatuation, not wisdom. Still, he said nothing. After the ceremony, the festivities continued into the night. Dancers leaped and twirled, their anklets jingling, while the villagers sang songs of celebration. Amaka basked in their attention, her every move calculated to solidify her place as the future queen. As the night wore on, King Nduka called Chike aside. The king's face was shadowed by the flickering torchlight, his tone heavy with concern. My son, he said, you have made your choice, but I urge you to be cautious. Marriage is more than beauty and charm. Do not let your heart lead you blindly. Chike frowned, his excitement dampened. Father, you have always taught me to trust my instincts. I see something in Amaka, something special. The king sighed. Instincts are important, but wisdom is greater. I pray you are not deceived by what you see on the surface. Chike nodded, but his father's words lingered in the back of his mind. As he returned to the festivities, he pushed away his doubts, focusing instead on Amaka, who now stood waiting for him with a radiant smile. That night, as the palace celebrated, the seeds of the future were sown, seeds of joy, hope, and perhaps regret.